This week's podcast was sponsored by Miriam Errington Conveyancing in Adelaide, Australia. Thanks to Miriam and her company's huge generosity, We Are West Ham are going down under this summer, where I'll be flying out to Perth for West Ham's 2 pre-season friendlies against Tottenham Hotspur and Perth Glory. I'll also be hosting a live podcast event in Adelaide, none of which would have been possible if it wasn't for Miriam's generosity. So, if you are selling a property or need any conveyancing services whatsoever in Adelaide or the wider Australia area, then make sure you give Miriam a shout. Miriam Errington Conveyancing, who is the sponsor of this week's We Are West Ham podcast. You are listening to the We Are West Ham podcast, and West Ham United are European champions after last night's 2-1 Europa Conference League final victory against Fiorentina. I'm here with my mate James Jones in the Chechen capital, Prague. We both went to the game, we both agree it was one of the best nights of our lives, and I'm sure, as you can see by our appearance and hearing our voices, we certainly enjoyed the post-match celebrations. I do not know where to start. We're both feeling it today. It's absolutely indescribable how it felt to be there in the ground. We're so lucky to have both been there. Jonesy, I know you were feeling a bit ropey last night. How are you getting on today?
I'm still lost for words, mate, if I'm honest. I went into that game with an open mind, had half accepted that it was likely that we'd lose, but to win it in the fashion that we did, it's the best way to win a final, wasn't it? 90th minute winner. West Ham are European champions.
Well, I'm quick to give you grief a lot of the time for being perhaps an overly emotional West Ham fan. You like a cry at football, don't you, basically?
Oh yeah, there was a lot of tears yesterday. There was a lot of tears.
I don't think anyone will be surprised to hear that there were tears from you. However, what they might be surprised to hear is that there were copious tears from me as well after the game. I was there with my dad, who's just sitting behind camera at the moment. We've obviously been out like we did in all the European adventures and all the away days we did last season. They were amazing, but last night was weird, wasn't it? Like we both said, weird. I didn't really speak after the final whistle that much because we don't really know what to do we? When West Ham do well and actually win things.
Yeah.
1980, which my dad was at, he's 59 now. He was 16 when he was at Wembley to watch us win. The next big thing he's seen us win was last night. And for those born, from the mid-70s onwards, really, who won't really remember seeing West Ham win a bona fide competition, when we don't know what to do we? And that's exactly how it felt for me.
Yeah, I was saying that to my brother and mates as well, this morning. It's like, is this it? Like, have we done it right?
What do we do now?
Have we celebrated correctly? Like, is this what clubs do? And like, I don't really know what to do. I don't know how to behave. I never thought. I did believe that one day in my life that I'd see West Ham win a trophy, not a European one. But yeah, it's just a strange way of. I don't really know what to do, and I don't think it'll ever be tops.
No, well,
it's never going to be tops.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because we've been talking in the build-up about this is where West Ham are supposed to be. It's what we were promised with the stadium move, that sort of thing. And it was all just a bit, as it was last year, Leon away, we spoke about it before, it was all just a bit overwhelming for me last night anyway. I mean, the side Benrahma, obviously, one thing I will say, West Ham were rubbish.
We were terrible.
We may well be European champions, and we might have overcome Fiorentina with a 2-1 victory, which is glorious, and we all revelled in it. West Ham were useless.
Rubbish game of football.
Terrible game of football. The first half in particular was dire. I didn't think Fiorentina created loads, and there'll be fans listening going, well, it's David Moyes football, this is what we got used to this season. But I genuinely thought it was a rubbish game. West Ham were poor. Some of the times where it just looked so Sunday League, didn't it? There was opportunities to sort of try and play down the wings. But Emerson played really well, and we'd just go back to the defenders or Areola. They'd press high, and we'd just oink a long diagonal Sunday League style through ball, and try and expect Saïd Benrahma to beat one of their centre halves in an aerial battle. And then if we were lucky, it would go out for a throw into us. But invariably it didn't. They looked quicker, sharper, and all that sort of thing. Obviously it doesn't matter, but what were your sort of feelings throughout the game?
Well, I felt like going in to half time at 0-0 was important. I know they had that goal ruled out right at the end of the first half for offside. I thought going in at 0-0, given the lack of performance that we were seeing, was the best thing that we could have played for.
Especially with a disallowed goal.
Yeah, especially with a disallowed goal. And then second half is anyone's game again. You know, you go again, bit of a team talk, and you see what happens. And
then we come out for the first 10 minutes of the second half looking even worse than we did in the first half.
And then we get a massively fortunate penalty. It was handball. I would have been annoyed if that was awarded against
Seriously?
against us. Yeah.
What's fortunate about it?
I just think it was very soft. I know the handball rule is what it is these days. His hand does push it away from Bowen after he's chested it. So it does change. Yeah. It changes it, but I don't know. I just hate that handball rule. Full stop.
Sorry, I'm just going to have to interrupt the football chat for 2 seconds. And as listeners to the podcast know, we do tend to kick off with how you're feeling, a little bit of life updates. What you may not know, James, or the listeners and the viewers may not know, is I'm absolutely petrified of pigeons.
Are you?
We're sitting here in just outside the U Dominicana restaurant in central Prague. With all me, Jonesy and my dad, we've had a nice little something to eat and a few beers together before we kicked off the YouTube record. Jonesy apparently thought it would be a good idea to leave 2 or 3 of his chips on the floor, and I think you've managed to attract 80% of Czech Republic's pigeon population. They were now putting me off and I won't be able to concentrate for the remainder.
What is it about pigeons that you're scared about, mate?
Well, look at them, they're terrifying, aren't they? They're grubby.
They are the rats of the skies,
the rats with wings, exactly.
Yeah. But, alright, they're harmless.
Absolutely petrifying, mate. Well, you won't be saying it when they take over the world, will you? Everyone's fearful of AI at the moment, but pigeons should be
AI pigeons, yeah.
Look, back to the footy. Obviously we'll talk about the game in a bit more detail in a bit. I don't think that penalty's fortunate. As soon as you saw it, it's like you said, he controlled it. It wasn't out of Bowen's control. It hits him on the hand, which makes it more difficult for him to pick up the ball on the other side of it. And then, you know, I think it's the other way. If you see that against your team, you go, oh, that's a pen. As soon as, obviously the ref I thought was pretty terrible, a bit of a classic European attention seeker.
Yeah.
But as soon as they called him over, you think get in. Yeah. But you felt like they were gonna, did you not?
You had to just look at the reaction from the players to know that something happened. It was clearly a handball of some sort there. That's why they all went mental. They were arms up in the air. I just, having watched it back properly again this morning, and just felt like, I don't know, I'd take the handball rule full stop. I think it's too ambiguous, and I would have been quite upset if we didn't.
Fair enough. But look, obviously it did get given.
Yep.
And Sai Benrahma steps up, and I will admit, now you know obviously about my pledge to never ever again sing the Antonio song after his performance in Man United away in the FA Cup. I did feel like Antonio's Instagram post was almost an indirect dig at me this morning, saying a picture of him with the trophy in his hands. Lots of people have their opinions, but it's only your own that matter. I was alright, Mikel. You might as well at me, mate. Yeah. And then Sai Benrahma steps up, and I will admit that in support for him, before the pen, I did sing the Sai Benrahma song. And he dispatched it absolutely brilliantly. I don't think he had an excellent impact on the game overall, but I think it was made harder for him with the style of play that we were employing. But ultimately, in those pressure moments, that doesn't matter. He's more than earned his money by sticking the pen away. And you think, oh my God, dreamland, we don't deserve to be 1-0 up, but here we go.
Here we are, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, at that stage, what were you thinking? How were you feeling?
Well, look, I found the second half flew by for me. So I thought we'd scored earlier. It was like we scored in the 65th minute, I think the penalty was. So I thought we should have had like a full half, and then when I realised we only had like 25 minutes to play, I was like, oh, actually this could be the winner. This could be the winner. And because Fiorentina rarely threatened us, I was like, I don't feel under a lot of pressure from them. I don't feel like they're gonna come at us and there's a risk of them scoring 2 or 3 goals.
Yeah, that was clearly it, wasn't it? They were clearly the better side, but it didn't feel like they threatened us too much.
No.
They obviously had a disallowed goal, which sounds stupid saying that, but it didn't feel like Areola was pulling out 100% rocket saves left, right and centre.
No.
They just had a lot of the ball, they looked sharp, had a touch, looked better and all that.
They had another chance in the second half where just after they equalised, they had a chance where Bonaventura missed the target, who sort of got cut back to him, and he should have hit the target really, and he put it wide. And that was their best chance other than the goal they scored. But yeah, other than that, I didn't feel threatened by them at all, really.
No, they did just look good though, didn't they?
Yeah.
Like, if anyone deserved a goal, they were playing football well. we were just clinging on, getting it and lumping it. It was funny. So I don't know where. Obviously, I know where you were sat. We weren't sat together, unfortunately, which we have done before at some of these European games. Both really lucky to get in, by the way. I'm just going to have to give a nod to both Heineken and BT Sport, who were kind enough to sort out me and my dad for the game. Everyone will obviously have their views on corporate sponsors, corporate tickets, all that sort of thing. I've got 18 loyalty points. The actual tickets went down to 24. You know, those who know me and listen to the podcast know I put the effort in. I got to be there for a day I'll remember forever, an absolutely historic occasion. So yeah, just have to thank Heineken and BT Sport who sorted out me and Dad. I know you didn't get yours, Jonesy. You know, you had to pay a few quid for yours, didn't you? The nature of the small stadium meant that we couldn't get. You could only get 5,900 tickets for, you know, point gaining fans or whatever. You put that in a proper ground, and most people like me and you would have enough loyalty points to go and buy a ticket through normal means. So yeah, thanks Heineken and BT Sport for sorting me out and remember the game forever. So as far as the seats go, I was sat about 4 rows back on the halfway line pretty much opposite the tunnel, and it was a really peculiar sort of spot to watch the game from, because first of all, we'll go into all the other stuff with the cup throwing and the Fiorentina statement and all that later on. I thought they were really good football inside, and I thought their fans were absolutely outstanding. Yep. They were non-stop singing the whole entire way through, created a really good atmosphere, and to be honest, the volume was where I was sat, because I was bang in the middle, and in not a neutral section, but I had a Fiorentina fan 2 seats down from me, about 8 or 9 West Ham fans around me, lots of just neutral dignitaries as well. Because you're bang in the middle, you could sort of hear the opposing fans chants and singing a volume. Fiorentina far outperformed West Ham on a volume side of things. I will caveat that with the fact that I think having a drum is cheating.
Oh, it must be cheating, yeah. Make your own noise.
Yeah, exactly. Start chants with your claps, innit?
Yeah.
And I did get a bit of grief on Twitter before the game for posting a video, look, a couple of minutes before the kick-off, of posting a video of the Fiorentina end and just making the point that there was vast amounts of empty seats in the top corners of their section and in the bottom right corner as you looked at the Fiorentina end. And I got a load of grief saying, oh, they've all crowded into the middle. It's like, that looks like about 1,000 empty seats. Yeah. I don't think they've all crammed into like 10 rows in the middle or whatever. But that aside, where we were sat, like I say, you had Fiorentina fans dotted around us as well. A tiny little bit of trouble threatened in the first half, but overall perfectly fine. When West Ham score, we were obviously all moaning anyway beforehand, thinking, oh, we're rubbish here. When West Ham score, we went absolutely mental. Like, respectfully, and we weren't like giving it to anyone or anything like that, but I literally had a 3-seat gap and then 2 Fiorentina fans next to me. So I've obviously gone mental celebrating when Saeed puts the ball in the back of that. West Ham are massive everywhere. We got like surrounded by neutrals going, are you lot alright? Like, what the hell's wrong with you? But proper giving it some. So embarrassing. when Fiorentina score an equaliser 5 minutes later.
Yeah.
I think it was 62 and 67 the goal times.
Yeah.
I think my dad said. And it was like, just for my own sort of levels of embarrassment, it would have been nice for us to hold on for at least 10 minutes until I'd calmed down. But yeah, it was just mad, wasn't it? You sort of felt, oh, we've got that against a run of play, but they're not creating much, so we could grind this out here. And then 5 minutes later, Bonaventura pops up, excellent finish, and you're sort of like, oh no, well we sort of didn't deserve to score that one. Where are we going to find another goal from?
Yeah, I felt with the equaliser, okay, well that kind of confirms that this is going to go into extra time, probably penalties. Kind of like, yeah, let's just rule it out now. Like, this is where it's going to go. It's going to go the distance. We're going to be here forever. And then there's going to be a dilemma of, we spoke about it last week about the whole Fabianski and Ariola dilemma. Like, what's he going to do? Yeah, because like I said, I didn't feel like they were threatening enough to probably score a second, and I didn't think we were threatening enough to get a second either at the time. So yeah, they equalised, and I'm like, oh, penalties here then.
Did you think that straight away, just straight to extra time?
Yeah, I was like, this is where it's going to go.
I was just worried it was a momentum thing, and they were.
But they did after the equaliser. I felt like they probably got on top a little bit more. Obviously, with let's be honest.
Here we got Borussia Dortmund fans by the looks of it. The joys of live podcasting in Prague City Centre, by the way.
Put me off my train of thought.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so with the equaliser, I thought, they had a little bit more momentum, and they did come on top a little bit more, but even then, they had more possession after that. They didn't use it.
No.
They didn't make it count.
Yeah.
And that's what I was worried at the beginning, but then after about 5 minutes, it's like, actually, they're not really doing much with the ball.
No, quite. I think if you're a Fiorentina fan, there'd probably be a frustration of, oh, we're playing nice football here. Any danger of creating a chance, though, lads?
Yeah.
So, anyway, Bonaventura equalises, pressure's mounting. I enjoyed the second half a little more, obviously because we scored, and then obviously the eventual winner. You said you couldn't see it coming. Lucas Paqueta, who I thought was arguably the least average of all of our players yesterday. I don't think anyone was properly terrible. We'll go on to sort of individual performances in a minute. But Lucas Paqueta picks up the ball in the middle of the park. He'd had an odd evening, I thought, but overall okay. Threads a needle of the eye ball through to Jarrod Bowen, who sprints onto it, and where I was sat, I was slightly behind where Bowen and the line of defenders were when the ball was played. So there was a 40% chance in my head he was offside, and he runs through on goal, and I said this to you straight after the game. I couldn't really compute everything that was happening as it was happening, because he's through on goal, so I'm like, well, it's Bowen, he's going to score. It's not like Antonio earlier in the game where he was through on goal and he's made a complete nose of it. Jarrod Bowen's through on goal. Well, this is going in, and I'm trying to decide how likely it is he was offside, compute that it's really late in the game, and if this counts, West Ham have probably won this game in this competition. And it was all just a bit much, and I ended up, my celebration was odd. I was just like, yeah! And but froze. For those of you listening to this and not watching it on YouTube, we've actually put an effort into the filming this week, by the way, so worth watching on YouTube if you can. I was just sort of leaning back, not jumping up and down or anything, looking at the sky. But there was a little bit of me that was thinking, VAR are going to ping it. And I sort of hate that I didn't give it full cojones or full bananas, whatever the phrase is, another one of my analogies, for the goal, because I was a smidge worried he might be offside.
No, I mean, where we were sitting, we were right in line where Bowen made that run. So the moment he makes that run, I knew he was onside. I could see it was right in line with it. So that wasn't a concern for me. It came out of nowhere. Like 1 minute, just go, okay, this is going to go extra time, and then suddenly he's through. The ball's through, and he's one-on-one, and it's like, But how did that happen? Sometimes normally you see the build up to moves like that. And the build up just came out of nowhere and suddenly he's through, and it was like, it just felt like slow motion for me. He's through one-on-one, and everything just slows down. And it's almost like I even lost the ability to hear. It went silent for a little bit for me, and I was like, and then the ball goes in the back of the net. And,
Eruption.
I'm like, I'm a couple of rows ahead. There's people falling all over the place. People crying, I'm crying.
Yeah, of course you were crying.
And it was just like, but then it was like, how long's left? Then it was like, how long we got? And then they throw up like 5 minutes. It was like 5 minutes.
Which I didn't think was too bad.
I think it was too bad, but in the moment, it's like, where's he got 5 minutes from? It's definitely not 5 minutes, and I was going mad over it. And it's like, right,
after the players have been celebrating in the corner for at least 3.
Yeah, exactly. And then we get the phones out, and we like time in 5 minutes, and it gets to 5 minutes after that, and I'm like, it's been 5 minutes, we've blown the whistle.
Screaming at him,
But yeah, it was incredible.
I mean, as the ball goes in the net, mental, absolutely mental, crazy feeling. What I do quickly want to give a nod to is the absolute sensational defending from every single man in a West Ham shirt after that moment.
Yeah.
Right at the end of the game, it was almost every header was won, every on the ground battle. You know, players are sprinting when they obviously got nothing left by that stage of the game, sprinting themselves into the ground to press Harry, just do anything they can to make it awkward for Fiorentina to even get the ball in. Fornal's up that end of the pitch, Paqueta still running his socks off, and then Aguerd and Ogbonna and Souček at the back, a few commanding headers, and really, after the goal, Fiorentina didn't have a sniff, did they? We didn't really get a moment of nerves, and there was a couple of free kicks maybe that may have come close, but overall, I just thought it was absolutely sensational from West Ham, and a brilliant bit of game management at the end. And then, how long was it then? If you were timing it, how long injury time was there played? Because it did feel like it was like, alright, ref, surely we're there now.
I can't remember.
And he played on another couple.
It was over the 5 minutes. It weren't quite 6. It was about 30 seconds over, maybe, something like that.
I was like getting upset or emotional before the final whistle.
Oh, I was gone by then. I was gone. So like, the later it goes in that 5 minutes, the more sure you are that we're gonna do it. So like the tears are already flowing before the referee, and then the referee blows, and I'm on the floor by then. And you see the player, all the staff are running on the pitch, and
unbelievable.
I glance over at the West Ham fans and the limbs. I've never seen anything like it in my life. Incredible. Unbelievable,
wasn't it? Unbelievable. Look, I mean, worth noting as well, mate, you put it out on Twitter this week, you went with your brother, and it would have been your dad's 60th birthday.
It would have been, yeah.
On the day of the final. Unbelievable, like, emotional moment for you and your brother anyway.
Yeah.
It's always an emotional day whenever his birthday comes around. I mean, you know, I'm not really one for stuff like that normally, but there's got to be some sort of poetic justice in all that, isn't there?
Yeah, like, I noticed it months ago. So when it's the final, and then realised it was going to be on his 60th birthday. And that's when I was like, well, maybe this is written in the stars a little bit, that we're going to go and win this, and we actually have, and that's what added to the emotion for me and my brother, really. That it was a good birthday present for him.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. No, well, look, cheers to your dad, obviously, and cheers to all the other West Ham fans who couldn't have been there. I was lucky enough to be able to watch it with my dad yesterday, and yeah, you know, we've had the same thing. Lyon away, it was last year. It's one of the moments we've spoken about countless times since. You were there with us, obviously, and then with your brother for the second half of that game. And yeah, they're just moments you'll just never ever forget, aren't they? You know, just magical moments. And one day, whenever we all sort of make our way off this mortal curl that we're all living on, those are the moments that you'll remember forever, aren't they? And we were saying, weren't we, after the game, that all of the years of hardship and just honestly, mate, like grimness of watching West Ham, it's not been a net positive experience as it's supporting West Ham, especially if you're born when me and you were born. And I'm just saying to like Dad and anyone who'd listened basically after the game, I sort of no longer feel cheated anymore. I no longer feel cheated by supporting West Ham, where all the years of like naff years under Allardyce in the Prem, the Avram Grant years, the relegations, even the sort of Moyes first spell wasn't particularly good, just existing it seemed.
Yeah.
All of the trouble and anger and stress, being moved away from Upton Park where we all love watching football on the promise that your football team will be better, and then for 5 years the football team arguably being worse. It's been a sort of overall fairly grim Aggie experience supporting West Ham, wasn't it? And I'll be honest, before Moisey came round for his second spell, I was starting to fall out of love with the whole thing.
Yeah.
Just as a mix of everything, with the ownership at the time and the apparent direction or lack of the club was going in, the stadium, everything. It was just we didn't look like we were going anywhere. I didn't recognise lots of elements of my club or our club anymore. But it was sort of even last night. We're even. We're quits again. Me and West Ham are quits.
Yeah, it certainly makes going through all of that worth it. I'd go through all that again. Yeah. If it meant at the end I could have what we had last night.
Well, what are you? 34?
34.
34. I'm 30. Well, I don't know if I could do another 31 years of it, mate. Just for one winning final. It needs to be more regular than that.
Need to go 34 years. Maybe this is the start of something special, but
hopefully.
It does though. The relegations, the relegation battles, the countless number of rubbish footballers that we've signed over the years, and that had to pay money to go and watch.
We should have been getting paid to go and watch something.
And then just rubbish managers that we've had, and losing playoff finals, losing FA Cup finals, and just all that pain, all worth it for me. Yeah,
I totally agree, mate. I totally agree. Listen, we will carry on chatting a bit more about the Conference League final. We'll go through some individual performances. We'll talk about what this means for David Moyes. There's been some Declan Rice movement since the final whistle, and we'll talk about through all the quotes and all the content and all that sort of stuff afterwards. Just a reminder, you can follow us on socials at @WeAre_West Ham. I'm at William Pugh _. James is at by James Jones. You can get us on Instagram at @WeAreWestHamPod. Thanks so much, by the way, to all of you who have chipped into the Prague Whip. You'll see we're enjoying a couple of them at the moment. We certainly had a few before, managed to get in a couple of pints together before the game yesterday and a few afterwards. And there's been a few of you on buymeacoffee.com/wearewestham in the build up to this week who have bought us some pints, so we're very, very appreciative of that. You can still do that, of course, buymeacoffee.com/wearewestham, as I mentioned. Get us on Facebook, and this video will be up on our YouTube channel at We Are West Ham Podcast, so make sure you go over and watch it, because rather than just two blokes talking into laptop camera screens over StreamYard like we normally do, we're actually together, we're in the middle of Prague, the backdrop looks alright, and you can see me and James sitting next to each other in person. Give us a 5-star review if you fancy it as well on Apple Podcasts, and you can email us at wearewesthampod@gmail.com. Those of you who have got in touch about the We Are West Ham Go Down Under, when I'll be going down to Australia in the summer for the 2 games in Perth. Lots of you have emailed in about that already. If I haven't got back to you already, I'm sorry, and I definitely will do, but thank you very much, we appreciate it. That's wearewesthampod@gmail.com. If you want to email us, stay with us, because we'll have loads more on player performances, Moyes' future, favourite bits of post-match celebrations, and where we go from here. All of that coming up next. So Jonesy, we sort of run through the emotions of the day. Really good that me and you managed to catch up beforehand, and obviously have a few afterwards for a bit of a debrief. One thing you will have heard at the beginning of this podcast, and we may put it in now, I don't know, TBC, I'll let James decide when he's doing the editing, but at around 3:40 this morning, I think, in Cafe 80s, just off the main square in Prague Old Town, Jonesy and I decided it would be a good idea, a good podcasting decision, after a few drinks, or several drinks, to record a draft introduction to the podcast then, just with our raw thoughts sort of thing. We'd had a few, so you'll hear that at some point, probably just after this bit, so excuse the swearing. That'll give you a laugh. That was post-match, Jonesy and I. We've sort of run through the emotions of the day, James. As you mentioned, for me, it hasn't really sunk in properly yet, to be quite honest. I didn't say a lot afterwards. It was all a bit jading and a bit overwhelming. And I think that much is still true. What I'm really disappointed about is that the presentation trophy is going to take place tonight, which is Thursday, while we'll still be out in Prague, so we won't be able to go. Sorry, the open top bus parade through East London, we won't be able to go, which is a shame, because we're still out here. I understand that the club had to do that because Pablo Fornells is getting married on Saturday, and loads of the players are going, so they needed to get it done as soon as possible. Well, let's talk a bit more then, Jonesy, about the performances of some of the players. I think, were there any standout positives or negatives for you? I think Declan Rice, probably the main one for me, just seemed quite overwhelmed by the knowledge it's probably going to be his last game for West Ham, and I would argue the game sort of passed him by.
Go past Declan Rice by. I think Fiorentina's tactics did a bit of a number on Rice. I think they targeted him a little bit in midfield.
How so?
I don't think they gave him a great deal of space, and because they were dominating the possession, they weren't really allowing him to impose his game on them at all. I don't think so.
That is true, yeah.
So he couldn't really get involved in when he wanted to, because they were just making sure that they were keeping possession, and when they did get the ball, when we did get the ball, they were on top of him really quickly. So, because we know what he's like. He's the type of player that will start some of those driving counter attacks, and he did it.
And he maybe did two of those last night.
Maybe not
two times. I can remember when he picked up the ball and drove it forward. Yeah,
so it wasn't his best game, wasn't his worst game either, to be fair. But the best West Ham player in my eyes was Emerson. I thought he was absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, well, I had him at close quarters. Obviously, being 4 rows from the front on the side in the first half, I thought he was very good. Yeah, and I think it was one of those decisions before. We all picked Cresswell in our team, didn't we? Yeah. Most West Ham fans wanted Aaron Cresswell to start the game. Whether there's a bit of, I think Emerson now is the first player ever to win all 5 UEFA trophies: the Champions League, the Europa League, the Conference League, the Super Cup, and one other.
Euros.
The Euros, of course, with Italy. Yeah. Clearly a big game player, and perhaps it's in Moyes' mind what Aaron Cresswell did in the latter stages of the Europa League last year. Getting sent off, the foul at Frankfurt, the foul, and the Lyon game obviously as well, and it looked like an inspired call, didn't it?
Yeah, well, like you said, he's a big game player, so he's won it all now in Europe. He's played in many finals, many Champions League finals, Euro finals. So I would like to think that rather than him thinking of Cresswell last season, he was more seeing it as Emerson, a big game experience. Just maybe adds a little bit more on the day. So yeah, it was an inspired selection, I think, but I thought he was class.
Yeah.
Didn't put a foot wrong. Defensively good going forward when we did have the opportunity. Didn't give him a sniff down his side. Just wonderful. He's definitely his best performance in a West Ham shirt.
Yeah. I think that much is certainly true. I thought Nayef Aguerd played very well.
Yeah.
I thought Zuma didn't really do anything right or wrong. He was just fine. He earned his money, 6 out of 10, whatever. Same, I think, could be said for Soufal. I think all the players worked hard. Lucas Paqueta, he's just clearly so good, isn't he?
Yeah.
That him in third gear, he's still one of the best players on the pitch.
Yeah.
And I think he was decent last night, probably a 7 out of 10. And even Antonio, he was okay, wasn't he? He worked hard. He couldn't have much of an impact on the game, because let's be honest, we just struck. We were clinical in the moments we got, weren't we? That come from, on the whole, it wasn't. West Ham didn't have a lot of the ball. They didn't do much. So there's not too much you can pick out as positive, really, is there?
No.
Do you know what I mean? It was like a penalty,
Yeah.
and then our only good open play move, basically, at the end that won it. But yeah, overall, I just thought Souček again. I thought was a bit. I don't know if it's the occasion or it's just sort of what he's been like this year, but he barely had an impact on the game, other than winning a few defensive headers late on.
That's why he was on the pitch, really, wasn't it? Just defensively make us a bit more solid. I don't think he was in there to add anything to our midfield.
A tackle or a completed pass wouldn't hurt, though, would it?
Very true. But he's been like that all season. If anything, he's been like that for well over a year now, where he's not really had much of a say or an impact on anything, really. He's kind of just been there. I'm surprised he hasn't been dropped more than he should have done. I think Moyes just stuck by him probably for too long, I think.
Yeah.
But wasn't the worst performance from him.
Police car just pulling up behind us, by the way. If you're not watching on YouTube, you won't be able to see it.
It's not ideal, is it?
Crimes against podcasting, maybe, are the charges. What do you reckon?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah? You look a bit nervous, mate. Have you done anything wrong last night?
What did I do last night?
So, Fornals comes on, obviously, off the bench as well. Couple of dodgy passes. And he just
thinking about his wedding at the weekend, wasn't he?
Say that again?
Just thinking about his wedding at the weekend.
Oh, yeah, perhaps so, yeah. But it's a couple of dodgy passes. You thought, oh, God. Because I wanted him to start, and I think, obviously, Ben Rama scores a penalty, which is okay. But I just felt like Moyes didn't give himself anywhere to go with his selection.
Yeah.
It was like, well, if you start with maybe Cresswell and Fornals, obviously the Cresswell decision we spoke about, but start with Fornals and it's an attritional game, then you bring Ben Rama and he maybe had something different.
Yeah.
It's not the way he went, but then Fornals after, he sort of took him a little bit to get into the game, maybe he was a bit nervous, but then he was good as well. I thought, were there any other stand-up performers? I just felt like everyone, bar Bowen, who actually won man of the match, was either a 6 or 7 out of 10. It was like nothing spectacular, but nothing too weak either, other than Rice probably being our worst player.
Yeah, I don't think there was any more. Emerson was the main standout. And other than that, it was just a bog standard performance from everyone on the pitch. Wasn't a terrible performance, wasn't our best performance, but there was enough in it to ensure that we were still in the game.
Yeah. Right, Jonesy, what do you want to talk about next then? You've got David Moyes and his future, the celebrations after the game. I was right by that famous video that's come out already of him hugging his dad afterwards, giving his dad, who I think is 87, his medal, brought him down onto the pitch. Absolutely lovely scenes there. Yeah. You could just talk about Moyes, what it means for him. Declan Rice, David Sullivan has obviously come out this morning on TalkSport and effectively said that Declan Rice has probably played his last West Ham game, which isn't that new news to anyone really. We talk about Declan Rice's future, or we could talk about fans throwing cups and objects onto the pitch, cutting the Fiorentina captain's head, and the subsequent Fiorentina statement saying it's all those West Ham fans' fault. If it wasn't for that, we would have won the game. Yeah,
well, on Rice, quickly, I don't think it needs a great deal of conversation around it. Everyone knows that was his last game in our West Ham shirt. I think we've said goodbye to him now.
What a way to say goodbye.
Yeah, I mean, the best possible way for him to bow out. We've known for ages that he's on his way out, and he'll leave, with our blessing. Fans aren't going to be annoyed with him for leaving. He deserves to be playing for playing the Champions League and competing for trophies all the time. He's got a trophy now, but he should be competing for league titles, FA Cups, Champions Leagues. So that's where he's going to go. And so I have some fans are thinking, oh well, now we're in Europe still.
That's shit.
Excuse me. Who's sneeze, Jonesy? Now we're in Europe, back in the Europa League. That might convince him. Will it? It won't.
No, of course not.
No, he's got
his time. Yeah, David Sullivan said, didn't he? He offered him $200,000 a week 18 months ago. He rejected that deal. It's cost him 10 million, or he would have earned 10 million quid extra in that time if he'd taken it. He wants to go, and you can't keep a player against his will. We know he's going, and I think that's sort of a conversation further in the summer, wherever he goes.
Yeah.
Who knows? It's still all sort of speculation at the moment, mostly. Just one thing on that then. I saw some muted criticism this morning, sort of saying towards Sullivan are weakening our negotiating position, and why are you speaking about it now? Worth noting, he was asked. He went on the radio to obviously bask in a bit of the glory, and he was asked about Declan Rice's future, and he gave an honest answer to it, which wasn't that new. Are you sort of critical of that, his decision and his comments in any way?
We didn't say anything that was massively new. He didn't shock anyone with what he said. Everyone knows exactly what the situation is. I mean, the only difference is that he's admitted that he offered him £200 a week and it was turned down.
I think we even knew that, though.
Maybe we did even know that.
Before,
when I saw that, I wasn't like, oh my god, I can't believe that. I didn't know that. It was like, oh right, okay. So, I don't think he said anything. I just think he was asked. Maybe he could have just not answered it, or not given it a solid answer like, yeah, he's gone. Actually, it could have gone.
Now's not the moment for that.
Now's not the moment. Let's not talk about Declan Rice. Let's talk about the fact West Ham won a trophy. But instead, he's given a very thorough answer. Even though he hasn't really said anything in that answer, no one really knows. So.
But he did also say, which I thought was good, that you couldn't have asked for a more committed player than Declan Rice this season. Which is exactly what we've seen. I don't think it was his best season at West Ham, to be honest. I think the season before, the Europa League run was his best season at West Ham, especially in the league as well. But a great way to sign off. Clearly loves the club. Mark Noble saying as much afterwards as well, spending all the time with him. He genuinely loves West Ham. He's been a great servant, and that is the perfect way to leave, isn't it? He hasn't kicked up a fuss. He's tried his socks off until the very end, and if he goes, he'll go with all of our blessings.
100%.
Come on then, talk to me about Moisey. Wonderful to see him last night. They were actually muted. Well, not muted, because it was fair. I would say the majority of fans were singing it. But you had the "We've Got Super David Moyes" chants going on. Not as raucously as they were sung in Lyon, it's fair to say. That much is true. But they were still sung. There was still support for him. I think Declan Rice came out in his post-match interview and called him maybe the best West Ham manager ever. I think that's probably stronging it a bit, but he's certainly the greatest manager of the modern era. He's given us something we never thought would be possible. Where does it leave him? Your brother made the salient point last night at around 3:26 a.m. that if I was Moisey, I'd resign tomorrow. That's it. Leave on a high. Whenever do you see managers leave on a high? It's like, alright, I suggest it's time for you to leave. And it will not be on a high, because it's 3:26. You're looking a bit worse for wear. But I kind of understand his point. Where does it leave you with Moisey? Because we've been saying the only way I think there's a chance of him staying is if he wins a Conference League, and he has. And then if you look at the three things he's achieved over the last 3 seasons, our league positions have been well above average in 2 of them, and then our performance in a cup competition has been the best for nearly 5 decades. So he's exceeded expectation in all 3 of the seasons in his second spell, in different ways. Granted, there's been a dip in the football this year, but I don't know, where does it sit with you now?
Well, I think there's an argument to say that how does he improve on what he's currently achieved at the club?
Win the Europa League.
Okay. We could win the Europa League.
Yeah, but that's like saying to Pep, if he wins the treble this year,
of course, yeah.
How do you improve on that? Of course. We'll keep being good.
I think let's not beat around the bush though. Yes, he's been massively successful for West Ham. But
in a way that there's no guarantee anyone else would be.
Yes, exactly. But is he the manager? We're talking style of play here now.
Yeah.
Is he the manager that we're going to want to stick with for the next 5-6 years? From a style of play point of view, I don't think he is. What he's achieved, incredible. I'll forever love the man. What he's given us, but I don't think he's the manager that we are realistically going to be sticking with for the next 4, 5, 6 years.
No, right, well that's not the question though. 4, 5 or 6 years, maybe not. He'd probably say the same as well, to be fair.
But, I mean, if I was him, very similar to what my brother said, I said it a few weeks ago on the podcast as well, died a hero. I'd rather him go out now on a high than him leave under a cloud in 6 months' time after he started next season poorly and we're in the bottom three.
But that's not, there's no guarantee that will happen, is there?
It's not guaranteed, but eventually that's the only way that managers leave football clubs these days, is if they're either poached by someone else, we know there's interest from Celtic, or they've had a terrible start to the season and they go on a terrible run of games and then they're getting sacked. I don't want to get to a situation where David Moyes has been sacked mid-season. I want him to leave on a high, or he's been poached by someone else. I don't want him to leave under a cloud because he don't deserve that. What he's achieved, I just don't think that would be a good way for.
Okay, so
let's have it right. A legendary manager now. He's won a trophy. He's a legendary manager at West Ham, which just sounds mental to say.
Well, that's what I'm going to say. It's an odd thing to call him a legendary manager, but you'd prefer it if he went. Right?
I'm not saying I prefer it if he went.
Or you think it would be better?
I just think I'd rather him go out like that than him go out as sacked because we've lost 15 games in a row.
But if he gets sacked because of what happens next year, that doesn't diminish anything he achieved in the first 3 seasons, does it?
It doesn't, but it still leaves under a cloud, doesn't it? People more. But in
Bilic left under a cloud, but people still remember him as the manager who brought us the excellent last season at the Bowen. I don't really remember how naff we were the following season at London
No, of course
Stadium,
not, but he didn't win a trophy.
Huh?
He didn't win a trophy.
No, and people still remember him fondly, is my point. So, does it really matter? But, because it's not guaranteed, you talk, and lots of people who say that talk from a stance that, when we're in the bottom 3 after 10 games next year, there's every chance that this season in the league was just a blip.
There's no guarantee that. I mean, we might have a really good season next season.
Another one.
But it's like, the reason why I say that is purely if I was him. If I was him, I'd be like if I leave now, I've left on the highest of highs. And I could potentially go and manage Celtic Boyer Club.
Yeah, I think if there's a move for him,
500 million trophies in Scotland
in one season. If there's a move for him, I think maybe. But if not, why would he walk away from a year's contract anyway?
Then I get that.
Like, he wouldn't walk away from just from a purely financial side of it. But all right then. So you said what do you think will happen?
Well, at the moment, I think he stays.
Yeah.
I think he stays. Having listened to his post-match interview yesterday, there was no hint that he had an eye on leaving. There was no hint that, if anything, he was hinting at like what's going to come.
Chesney Hawkes has just walked past. Chesney, can we have a word? Yeah, it's we're live on the We Are West Ham podcast at the moment. This is my dad. Chesney Hawkes just stopped by. Chesney, come and have a quick chat about the game yesterday. If you got 2 minutes, thanks very much. Well, first of all, were you at the game?
I was there, mate.
How do you feel now? And how did you feel at the time? And just, we can't get our emotions out. It's all too much.
I agree. It's like elation. I mean, what I've found just walking around the streets is like meeting all West Ham fans around Prague, is that kind of feeling of pinching yourself, like, did that actually happen? Did I dream that?
Yeah.
What? That's not like West Ham to get a last-minute winner, and it's like, because we, as our generation, have not experienced anything like this, So it's like we really are pinching ourselves, It's insane. But it was like Roy the Rover stuff with that last-minute goal from Bowen, wasn't it? It's just unbelievable. As soon as it came through, we all knew that was it. But glad it was Bowen.
Yeah, well, definitely. The one thing we've been saying though, because we're not used to it, like you say, what do you do now? What happens next?
We go and win the Europa League. What do you think?
Yeah, that's what we've been saying. Right, one more thing. Moisey, we're just talking about it now. You've just come into the end of our conversation about that. Clearly emotional afterwards. What have your thoughts been on him this season, and where does it leave him now? What would you like to see happen, and what do you think will happen?
I've kind of flip-flopped with this quite a lot this season. I think a lot of West Ham fans have. I've always been of the mind to stick with a manager and give him time. But then I think this season has been such a tough road for us. And there were times when I definitely said, no, I think it's time for a change. But obviously, in hindsight now that we've we've had actually a pretty good season. I think I'm really glad that I'm got to give credit to the club for sticking with Moyes, because obviously here we are, and there's a lot of other clubs that didn't do that and have gone down and had a tough time now. So I think we've got to keep him on this for next season. I would be happy to see Moyes here for another season.
Jonesy just made the point just now that if it was him, perhaps you'd leave as it's almost, should Moyesy leave as a hero? Is he? I mean, I'm personally saying
basically died a hero sort of thing. So
walking away from £6 million in your last year of your contract, probably not that. I wouldn't. That wouldn't buy my heroicism or whatever the word is. But is there any credence in that? Do you think?
Yeah, I think there is. I think leaving on a high, same as Rice. Really, it's I think if he left now. He's a legend anyway now. He's a West Ham legend. He goes down in history with some of the greatest managers we've ever had. And John Lyle, it's like he's a European Cup winning manager for us. It's fucking great, isn't it?
It's crazy.
It's mad, isn't it? I know. So and I do feel the same about Rice. I mean, I know the news is out today that he's moving on for sure. And I think we all knew it was coming, didn't we, boys? It's we all had that kind of like little minuscule chance that he might, if we won this, then we're playing European football next year, Dex. Come on, mate, but no. I guess that wasn't meant to be. So.
Absolutely. Well, look, mate, we appreciate you. We're stopping off and having a chat for the We Are West Ham podcast. Just quickly, describe what you did at both the Bowen goal and the final whistle, because we've had some very varying stories. It all just got a bit much for me. We both cried. James is a crier anyway.
I'm a crier.
He's a crier anyway, yeah. But yeah, it was I was worried he was offside, so mine was somewhat of a muted celebration, but then the final whistle, just emotion. What did you do for the goal and then the final whistle?
Well, for me, I'm with my brother, my best friend, and my son, and it's a proper family affair. Amazing. And we were all together. And when that Bowen goal went in, it was carnage where we were, absolute carnage. And it was that kind of moment, wasn't it? Because there was another 5 minutes, and we were all holding on to each other and cuddling each other, and just I almost hurt because my son was squeezing me so much. And when that final whistle went, all five of us just burst into tears. Yeah. There was tears everywhere. There was a bloke in front of us. Real hard East End type of guy, and he met me before. He's like, right, Chase, nice to meet you. And at the end, he had his head in my shoulder, and it was wet. He was like sobbing in my shoulder. And I was like, it's all right, mate, let it out. And he's like, I know, I can't believe it. So it was just, I don't think I've ever been so elated in my life, and I've got 3 kids.
Yeah. And there's some hit records as well.
And a little success, exactly.
Yeah. Well, look, Ches, thanks very much for stopping by. We really appreciate it. You're on the We Are West Ham podcast. Cheers, boys. Enjoy yourself in Prague. What a time. And West Ham are European champions. Let us sink in. Nice little impromptu stop by from Chesney Hawkes there, pop sensation. Jonesy, would you argue that is the most spontaneous bit of podcasting we've ever done?
100%, yeah. I don't think we've ever been that spontaneous ever. So.
No, definitely not. He may be one of the most famous guests we've ever had on as well.
Probably by some way.
Yeah, I would say, yeah. Other than the two of us, of course.
Of course,
and all the West Ham legends we've had in. Yeah. No, well, massive respect to Chesney Hawkes. His was the one and only, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was his song. There was 2 reasons why I didn't make a gag about it then. One, because I wasn't certain that was his song, and it would have been horrifying if I'd have gone, you are the one and only, and he was like, that wasn't me, mate, that was Spandau Ballet or whatever.
Spandau Ballet.
And also, I was like, we've just accosted the bloke in the middle of the street while he's trying to have
a couple of beers.
Not really that friendly or good form to take the mickey out of him. But, quality stuff. There you go. Bonus guest Chesney Hawkes for this week's pod. I don't know where we were before. I think we got to the end of the Moisey debate. I just don't see there's any way he doesn't leave.
I think he stays,
I think he does stay. And you know what? I don't think it's as bleak as everyone says. I think this season could turn out to be a blip and things improve. But yeah, I feel he's going to stay, whatever happens, unless Celtic come in, because I do think that would be a reasonable a reasonable fit for him. But yeah, we'll see on that front. And as Chesney Hawkes has said there, he's a legendary manager, whatever happens from here on out. So I think the end to this season should give us all renewed hope and excitement, and hopefully we can make some wise moves in the transfer market. There was one more thing, of course, James. So you had the fan trouble. I say trouble. It was all very well behaved during the day, of course. A couple of little clips of some ultras. I hate that term.
Yep.
It's football fans who put on black t-shirts and think they're hard, and calling themselves ultras makes them sound harder than calling them like black t-shirt brigade or whatever, which is what we should call them. But I understand it was the Fiorentina black t-shirt brigade that ran through the town a bit earlier in the day. Little bit of fisticuffs, and that soon sort of went away, really. But during the game, of course, as we saw, lots of cups flying down from the West Ham fans. An odd decision to let fans drink in their seats, to be quite honest. There's a reason that rule is in at most football games, certainly in England. And then, sort of, you don't really want to see that sort of thing. We just find it a bit stupid. Throwing a cup at the pitch, what are you doing? Just crack on, just boo. Do what you normally do. So what's the point of throwing?
Gosh, something just rocks outside a corner as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like he's giving it to the fans. Exactly, celebrating.
It was a strange decision, I think.
Yeah, that was odd. But obviously one of them struck the Fiorentina captain on the back of the head, drew a lot of blood very, very quickly. Comment on that situation first, and then Fiorentina released a statement as well, which I will read out. But just talk to me first of all about the general cup throwing that we saw, and then that in particular incident, which of course drew blood.
Well, I found it to be, you're right with regards to drinking at the seats. I was quite surprised that we were allowed to do that. It was a bit like when I was walking through with my pint, I was expecting the steward to stop me and go no.
Yeah,
and it's kind of just let us all through. But at the same time, whichever way you look at it, you just shouldn't be chucking anything at the pitch, anything at players. Just know you're not going to achieve anything out of it. Although Fiorentina think otherwise, but all you've achieved is you've assaulted a player. Essentially. Yeah, and it's just it makes the club look a bit silly, doesn't it? We've won the game. That's what it should all be about, isn't it? And instead we're being called out in the media for being hooligans.
Yeah, it is worth noting that I'm not condemn. Sorry, I'm not saying it's okay. There is a word for that. Condoning. I know it was similar to condemning. Thanks. I've had a couple of beers this week. It's been a long old week. I'm not condoning it, of course, but there is a difference between that and, like we saw, running through the streets, smashing up bars and that sort of stuff, which, to my knowledge, no West Ham fans have done once again.
No.
It just does make it easier for particularly European clubs and media organisations to paint West Ham fans in a bad picture when, on the whole, it's been another fantastic European occasion. With the vast majority of fans behaving very well. But Fiorentina statement, Jonesy, after the game: Fiorentina strongly condemn what happened to their captain Cristiano Baraghi during the Conference League final last night. Baraghi was hit on the head by an object thrown from the stand housing West Ham fans in the 33rd minute of the first half while he was about to take a corner. This unacceptable behaviour obviously affected the performance of the footballer and his teammates, who had their attention drawn away from footballing matters by threats to their own safety. The Viola captain, despite suffering a deep wound to his head requiring 8 stitches, played on and displayed the values of fairness, integrity and sportsmanship, which should be the benchmark for all football and that Fiorentina seek to champion with all of their power. The club is certain UEFA will thoroughly evaluate the incident and duly punish those responsible for this act, delivering an appropriate response and setting an example so that such situations never occur again. Sorry for spitting on you during that monologue.
I wonder what that was.
I thought it was raining.
Yeah, I thought it was raining.
I mean, odd. Obviously, we don't want to see it. Not great. Is there much in that, or is it sour grapes?
They've got a right to feel annoyed about the situation. I think they're clutching at straws by coming out and almost blaming them losing the final on that moment by going, it affected the player and the teammates' performance. Sorry, but that's just rubbish. It's not true. Otherwise, they wouldn't have equalised. If they were that effective, they wouldn't have equalised against us. They would have lost 4 or 5-0 in the end.
Heads would have completely gone,
So it's just rubbish. They've come out and they basically use it as a bit of an excuse. It's wrong what happened. They have a right to feel aggrieved, but it's not why they lost the football match.
No, worth noting as well that West Ham released a statement saying they'll be pursuing the individuals involved and looking to bring charges and stadium bans and that sort of thing. So again, sort of Wally behaviour will be probably met with massive punishments for mindless actions that didn't really achieve anything. So bit of a strange one. But look, Jonesy, I think that sort of brings an end to our post-match reaction podcast. You can hear it in our voices, no doubt, how much we enjoyed the game last night, how much we've enjoyed the occasion. Certainly the post-match celebrations were something to behold as well. Have you anything sort of to add, really, before we bid farewell?
No. It's been a really long season, and it's ended in a way that I never thought was ever possible in my life, and happiest man in the world. And that's literally all I've got. I'm starting to get a little bit emotional now. It's like, it's mad. We've won a European trophy. Here we are.
What more can you say, mate? What more can you say? No, I totally understand. Listen, me and Jonesy are probably going to have a break, I think, for a week or two. I'm, of course, back in the summer and we'll be out in Perth filming and recording lots more content for the podcast and the YouTube channel, so keep in touch with us then, of course. We will do our usual end-of-season review pod in a couple of weeks, I'd say, Jonesy, wouldn't you? Give ourselves a little bit of time to rest and recuperate, and then we'll be back for the end-of-season pod. Review pod, as we always do, once we're back in London. But as James said, really, it has been a difficult season. We understand why fans have had their grievances at times, particularly the match-going fans who have to watch it and pay good money and spend a lot of time to watch what at times has been frustrating, annoying, depressing football. But if we experience what we experienced last night, surely each and every single one of us would take that time and time again. We achieved the exact same prize this season of qualifying for the Europa League as we did when we come sixth a couple of seasons past. Technically, prize-wise, we've done better this year than we did last year. So
it's crazy, isn't it? I'd rather do that every year.
I know people will argue it's a more noble endeavour to make it by qualifying through the Premier League, but what was more enjoyable? Honestly, like the difference between coming 5th, 6th and 7th, there's obviously a few decent performances, a few wins in the Prem, but ultimately, what's more enjoyable? If we were to qualify for the Champions League, we asked this already, we might win the Europa League next year.
I'd rather win a trophy every single season.
Of course, mate. Of course. So look, absolutely brilliant stuff from David Moyes in Europe this season. Unbeaten as well. Unbeaten throughout the whole competition.
Oh, and I did notice that Ghent tweeted the club apologising for the draw. So it wasn't a 100% record.
100% win record.
So they've apologised, but congratulated us at the same time.
Yeah, a phenomenal achievement from West Ham. It really hasn't sunk in for Jonesy or I yet, and I think lots of West Ham fans we're talking to around here in Prague, it's been a long slog for most of us, particularly the match-going ones amongst us, and I think you could tell that last night. And I'm not saying if you're still a match-going fan, but if you have been for a considerable amount of time at any point of your life, you know what it's like. It takes a lot of your time and energy, money, takes away some of your plans, and you have to organise your life around West Ham. For those of us like me and James and all of you out there listening and all of you here in Prague, that was for everyone who's spent any time, energy and money on West Ham before, particularly during the long, frustrating times where it would have been properly easy to walk away from the club. Absolutely amazing. I'm sure it will sink in probably over the next few days, starting with the trophy open air bus tour through East London, which by the time you're seeing or listening to this will have happened already. It will continue to sink in over the next few days. But I just want to say thanks so much for listening and watching The We Are West Ham podcast this season. Your support has been superb. With the engagement levels are up this year. Our numbers are up, listener numbers, YouTube subscribers, general engagement levels, followers numbers on socials. We've grown this nice and organically. We love the community that we've fostered here. We try and have it as a bit of an ag-free environment, unless Saeed Ben Rama and Mikel Antonio are our points of discussion, of course. But we love what we've done. We love all you guys who get involved. Thanks so much for listening and for your support this season. West Ham United are European champions. Surely anything that's come before is worth it for that. If anything, it might actually be a good time to give up. Jonesy wants Moisey to quit on a high. I think I just might. Thanks very much for listening. We'll see you in a couple of weeks probably. Don't forget, West Ham are massive. Up the Hammers. Thanks for your support. This week's podcast was sponsored by Miriam Errington Conveyancing in Adelaide, Australia. Thanks to Miriam and her company's huge generosity, We Are West Ham are going down under this summer, where I'll be flying out to Perth for West Ham's 2 pre-season friendlies against Tottenham Hotspur and Perth Glory. I'll also be hosting a live podcast event in Adelaide, none of which would have been possible if it wasn't for Miriam's generosity. So if you are selling a property or need any conveyancing services whatsoever in Adelaide or the wider Australia area, then make sure you give Miriam a shout. Miriam Errington Conveyancing, who is the sponsor of this week's We Are West Ham podcast.